There's been a discussion on TDO Chat about cases which have a very poor prognosis, so I thought I'd show the case that actually started TDO. This case was referred from an oral surgeon in Florida that had had 4 or 5 apicoectomies by 4 different endodontists, and they were all failures, and the patient had draining sinus tracts on each one. And the oral surgeon wanted to know whether it was worth the patient to fly out to San Diego and for me to retreat these. He had a private jet, so it wasn't a problem coming out. So in trying to collect all the records from the prior endodontists, I became extremely frustrated. The records were very poor, very well organized. Half the time you couldn't read them. And I didn't want to actually commit to treating the case without actually knowing what happened before. So it was very frustrating. And at the end of the process, I looked at my own record and found that it wasn't really a lot better. So I thought, this is really unacceptable as a specialty. We should be doing a much better job of record keeping. These are just some of the files from that record, and this is how endodontic records were done in the 1990s. These little envelopes and check marks. And when I looked at my records, I was very distressed because they weren't really what a specialist should have. And I decided, well, I'm going to fix this problem, and I am not going to have records like this. So my front office manager was Amy, and she was a very good Access programmer. And I went to Amy and I said, we're going to create a digital record. Will you program it for me? And we'll work on it every day. And we'll take each form and I'll put it through a certain process. What is the data I need to collect to do this well? What is the order in which I collect the data? How do I separate out the different kinds of data? How can the data be collected in a way that I actually work clinically so I'm not on a million different forms? How do I effectively display the data? What compromises do I have to make in attempting to collect an ideal set of data? And lastly, how do I make it queryable? So Amy said, well, we can do this. I'm going to need very distinct information about what it is you want. So I basically, in 2 weeks, I wrote out the entire TDO program using that process. In going through each form, I gave these forms to Amy, and she programmed them. This actually came from my experience in the Navy. I was a line officer on a carrier during Vietnam, and in a carrier environment, you have to work off checkoff lists, and if you don't, people are going to die. So you're dealing in extreme environments. People are tired, without sleep, working through the night. And if you don't have checkoff lists and a very methodical way of working, people are going to die. So this came from my experience in the Navy. Amy was a very good programmer, and we programmed this. So that's how it started. And what happened to the case? Well, I retreated all of the cases, and then I redid the surgery. When we redid the surgery, I sent the lesion and it came back as an apical cyst. And I received a follow-up several years later. This is 12 years later, and he had lost the right lateral incisor, but everything else was intact. I think the last recall is from 2012. And I actually taped this. This was at the time in the 90s where I was taping every single procedure I did. So this is the actual tape of that procedure. I filled it with a bonded resin. That's what we were doing at that time. This was before MTA. So this is, I have the complete video if anyone is actually interested in looking at it, but this is the actual video from doing those 3 teeth. And we isolated, used our crypt control, etched the inside of the root, and filled it with flowable bonded resin. And I don't really know why the lateral failed. The patient was from Florida, so there wasn't a regular kind of recall on it. And he must be in his late 80s by now. I don't even know if he's alive. And then this is the suture. At that time, we were taking our sutures out in 24 hours. This is the 24-hour suture removal appointment. And he healed up uneventfully. So I thought you might be interested in seeing what actually started TDO. It was started with a case that frustrated me and made me aware that my record keeping wasn't much better than anybody else's, and we tried to create a system where it was better.